Welcome back, everybody. Today we're doing a deep dive into something really interesting, the impact of aerobic exercise on your health. But we're not just going to talk about, the general idea that exercise is good for you. We're really going to dig into how it specifically affects a couple of conditions. We're looking at asthma and Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. It's fascinating how research is really starting to show that exercise isn't just about physical fitness. It can be a really powerful tool for managing all sorts of health challenges.
Exactly. And so to do that today, we're going to be looking at a couple of studies. One from the European Respiratory Journal. This was a 2020 meta-analysis looking at aerobic exercise and asthma in adults.
Okay.
And then the other one that we're going to be taking a look at is from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. A little bit of a mouthful there.
Right.
But this was a 2022 meta-analysis investigating the effects of aerobic exercise on cognitive function in people with Alzheimer's. And what might surprise you is how the duration and intensity of exercise can actually have different effects depending on, what condition we're talking about. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, is it?
Not at all. There are a lot of nuances to consider.
So let's start with the asthma study. So this particular study looked at data from 11 different studies with over 500 participants. And one of the key findings is that aerobic exercise can improve asthma control and lung function in adults.
Right. And that's a big takeaway for anyone listening who has asthma.
Yeah.
Even if you're on medication, adding in regular aerobic exercise can potentially make a huge difference in terms of managing your symptoms and breathing better.
Yeah, that's really encouraging to hear. But I was kind of surprised to see that the study also found that exercise didn't really seem to have much of an effect on airway inflammation, even though that's a pretty key component of asthma. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the study authors, they speculated that it could be because all the participants were already using inhaled corticosteroids.
Okay.
So their medication may have already been effectively managing the inflammation, which could make it harder to actually see additional benefits from exercise specifically in that area.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's another interesting point in the study about lung function. It found a statistically significant increase after exercise. But the researchers said that it wasn't necessarily clinically significant. So what's the difference there?
Basically, statistically significant means that the results are likely not due to random chance.
Okay.
Clinically significant, on the other hand, means that the change is big enough to actually make a real noticeable difference in a person's everyday life.
Okay.
So in this case, it seems like exercise did improve lung function, but maybe not to a degree that you would readily notice.
So maybe not a huge change, but still a positive step in the right direction. And the study also mentioned that even that smaller improvement was comparable to the effects seen with some of the newer, more expensive biological treatments for asthma.
Yeah.
So, that's pretty remarkable when you think about the cost and accessibility of, just getting out there and exercising.
Yeah, absolutely. It really highlights the potential value of exercise as a complementary therapy.
And there's another interesting detail. The study suggests that combining exercise with diet and weight loss interventions could be even more effective than exercise alone.
Yeah.
Particularly for people who have moderate to severe asthma.
Right. That speaks to the importance of taking a holistic approach to health. It's not just about one single factor, but about how all these lifestyle changes can really work together to create a bigger impact.
Yeah, for sure. So we've been focusing on how exercise affects breathing with asthma. But now let's kind of shift gears and look at how it can impact the brain. So our second study here focuses on Alzheimer's disease. And this meta-analysis covered 15 studies with over 900 participants. And it found that aerobic exercise can significantly improve cognitive function in individuals with Alzheimer's. But there are some really interesting nuances in how these benefits actually show up.
Definitely. This research really challenges some of the assumptions we might have. For example, the study found that shorter exercise sessions, specifically around 30 minutes, were actually more effective than longer ones.
Oh, that's interesting. So I would thought that more exercise is always going to be better. What could explain that?
Well, there are a few possibilities. One thought is that shorter sessions might just be better tolerated by people with Alzheimer's,
Okay.
which would then make them more likely to actually stick with the routine. Consistency is key.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are there any other potential explanations out there?
Another possibility is that there's kind of a sweet spot for exercise duration when it comes to cognitive benefits. Maybe exceeding that point, at least in this population, can lead to fatigue or just diminishing returns.
So it's about finding that balance, which might be different for different people. Here's another finding I wasn't expecting. The study also found that exercising less than 150 minutes a week actually led to greater cognitive improvements than exercising for 150 minutes or more.
Right. That raises some important questions about the dosage of exercise.
Hmm.
I think we often assume that more is always better. But this research really suggests it's a bit more complex than that. It's about finding that right balance of benefits and potential risks. And that might be different for individuals and their specific conditions.
Yeah, it really does seem like it's about fine-tuning, the approach.
Yeah.
And speaking of details, the study also highlighted that the worse someone's cognitive function was at the start of the study, the greater the improvement they saw with aerobic exercise.
Right. That's a really hopeful finding. It suggests that even individuals who are already experiencing, noticeable cognitive decline can still benefit from aerobic exercise. And it really underscores that potential of exercise as an intervention, particularly in those earlier stages of Alzheimer's.
So we've been digging into these two studies, showing how aerobic exercise can be beneficial for both asthma and Alzheimer's.
Mm.
But I'm curious about the specifics. Like, what types of exercise did they actually look at?
Well, the asthma study considered a variety of activities, things like walking, jogging, spinning, treadmill, running, and then just some other less defined exercise programs. And while the analysis didn't really pinpoint, one type as being the best, it did emphasize that it's important to tailor exercise plans to meet individual needs and preferences.
Right, it's got to be something you can stick with and you enjoy. What about the Alzheimer's study? What did they look at?
That one focused specifically on aerobic exercise, the kind that really gets your heart rate up and increases your breathing. So the brisk walking, swimming, dancing, or cycling, things like that.
And that study used something called the Mini Mental State Examination, or MMSE, to measure cognitive function. Can you explain what that is and why it matters?
Sure. The MMSE is a common screening tool for cognitive impairment. It's a short questionnaire that assesses different areas of thinking, like orientation, memory, attention, and language. It's not a diagnostic tool on its own, but it can be helpful for identifying individuals who might need further evaluation. And then in the context of this study, it gave researchers a way to objectively measure how aerobic exercise was actually affecting cognitive function.
So both of these studies were meta-analyses, right? Which means that they combined data from multiple studies to get a more comprehensive look at the topic. Why is that approach so valuable, especially in health research?
Meta-analyses are really valuable because they allow us to see the bigger picture. By pooling data from many different studies, we can kind of overcome the limitations that you might find in individual studies. Things like small sample sizes or, specific methodological quirks. It's kind of like getting a clearer signal from a lot of background noise. And this is especially important when you're studying complex health conditions where you have all these different factors at play.
So it's about getting a more complete and reliable understanding. And in these meta-analyses, the researchers were able to kind of dig deeper into those nuances of how exercise duration, intensity, and frequency can impact outcomes. And that level of detail is incredibly helpful for then figuring out, the best exercise recommendations for individuals, right?
Absolutely. Moves us towards a more personalized approach to exercise.
So we've covered a lot of ground here exploring how aerobic exercise can benefit both asthma and Alzheimer's. And we've learned about how important it is to individualize exercise plans. But I think it's important to reiterate something that we touched on a little bit earlier. And that's the idea that exercise is not meant to replace medication.
Right. It's crucial to remember that. While exercise can be a powerful tool for managing these conditions, it should always be viewed as a complementary therapy, working alongside existing medical treatment. It's never a substitute for necessary medications.
And of course, as always, it's important to consult with your doctor before starting any new exercise program, especially if you have any existing health conditions.
Absolutely. Working together with your healthcare provider to develop a safe and comprehensive plan that addresses your individual needs and goals is essential.
So let's bring it back to our listener. You've heard us discuss two very different health conditions today, and yet both of these studies point to a common theme. And that's the incredible potential of aerobic exercise. So whether you're looking to manage asthma symptoms, maintain cognitive function, or, simply improve your overall health, incorporating regular aerobic exercise into your routine can really make a world of difference.
I think what's particularly encouraging is that even those short bursts of activity can have such a significant positive impact. You don't have to go out and train for a marathon to reap the benefits. Just getting your heart rate up for 30 minutes a few times a week can make a real difference in both your physical and your mental well-being.
Right. And that's so important to remember. It's really about making those small, sustainable changes that you can stick with over time. It's not about being perfect. It's about making that consistent effort. Which kind of brings me to a question I've been pondering as we've been talking about this research. If even short bursts of aerobic exercise can have such a positive impact on our physical and cognitive health, how can we kind of weave that knowledge into our daily lives? How do we make exercise more accessible and enjoyable and something we actually look forward to?
That's a great question, and it really requires us to kind of think a bit differently. We need to shift our mindset about exercise from something we have to do to something we want to do.
Mm.
And I think that starts with, finding activities that we genuinely enjoy, things that fit into our lifestyle and things that, bring us joy.
So it's about, reframing exercise as self-care and not a chore on the to-do list.
Exactly. And it's also about recognizing that it doesn't have to be this huge time commitment. Even those short bursts of activity that we can sprinkle throughout the day, they really can add up to big health benefits. So think about, taking the stairs instead of the elevator walking, or biking to work, maybe squeezing in a quick workout during your lunch break, little things like that.
I love those ideas. It's about, finding those opportunities to just move our bodies throughout the day. And those small victories, they really do add up, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every step counts, both literally and figuratively. And, when we start to see exercise as a way to enrich our lives rather than, a burden, it becomes so much easier to stick with it long term.
For sure. What about, the social aspect? Could finding ways to make exercise more social and fun be a key part of the equation? Like joining a walking group or taking a dance class or playing a sport with friends?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. That, the social connection and the element of fun can be so motivating, and it can really help us stay committed to our goals. It's about finding that sense of community and shared purpose.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. We've explored the science, the nuances, and really the practical implications of making aerobic exercise a regular part of our lives.
And hopefully you're feeling inspired to, lace up those sneakers, hit the pool, or find whatever activity it is that really gets you moving and grooving. Your body and your brain will thank you for it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep moving.